Welcome to the Make Your Mark podcast. Hey everyone, I'm Mark Moyer, author of Win Again, speaker, career coach, and business advisor. And I help athletes, executives, and entrepreneurs reach their fullest potential. What you're going to be hearing in every single episode are conversations with athletes and other sports-related influencers. And we'll be offering you the insight that you need to succeed in life, including advice that will let you jump past your competition, whether it be for a great new job or taking your business to a much, much higher level. Make sure to connect with me on social media at Mark Moyer Coach and go to my website, markmoyer.com, to get access to the tips and strategies that my coaching clients get directly. If you're looking for ways to make your mark, send me an email to mark@markmoyer.com and I'll get you going right away. Thanks for joining me today. It's going to be an awesome episode. Now, are you ready to make your mark? Let's do this. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Make Your Mark podcast. And whether you're listening to me from the US, overseas, maybe from the space station, wherever you are right now, welcome to the podcast. And you're going to love today's episode. I hope you're having a great day. I'm sure having a great day because I've just spoken to Marnie Schneider. Marnie is a ball of energy, a ball of positivity. She's amazing. And you're going to hear an incredible story about how she got her foundation started, how her grandfather was such a great impact on her. He was the owner of the Eagles for several years. But on top of that, he founded the Ronald McDonald House. I mean, this is a guy who had philanthropy at the core of his heart. And you could see that it's extended straight through to Marnie. So before I jump into that and we get started, if you haven't already done so, subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, leave a review, subscribe, get involved, send me an email to mark@markmoyer.com. Just interact with me. I'd love to hear from you. I love my listeners. You're all great people, and you all love the great stories, including the one I'm about to present to you. So without further ado, here's Marnie Schneider and myself on the Make Your Mark podcast. Welcome to Make Your Mark podcast. This is amazing to have the most incredible Marnie Schneider here with us today. And, we both attended an event last night. It was in honor of a new book that's come out, Standing O, and it's meant to raise money for a couple different charities, including your own. And we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. We're also going to talk about your background and your history in a few minutes, but we also want to make sure that the listeners understand that we're also going to be providing a fair amount of advice throughout this podcast and giving people guidance on how to really make the most of what they've been given and run with it and really show people how they can make their mark.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Mark. You really set the example and set the bar really high because as we've kind of had a few brief conversations, one of the things that really is amazing about you is that you really do what you say you're going to do. And I find that as I certainly get older and maybe perhaps get wiser, coming across men or women that actually can execute is really something that I cherish and I value your opinion. So I'm delighted that I get to be the beneficiary in many ways of your friendship and also your professional guidance. So wow. Thank you.
Execute. Almost makes me feel like I'm the executioner, but that's not the right term, I don't think, right?
No.
That'd be a bad thing to be, I think.
Well,
I'll just be an executor.
Execution. I mean, everybody has great ideas, but, being able to actually execute is really where the rubber meets the road. And that's it.
Well, look, what really brought me to you and made me interested in wanting to speak with you is that you clearly are just get stuff done. Just get it done.
Well,
get rid of the fluff. And I like that too. Too many people have too much fluff out there.
There's a lot of fluff. There's definitely, and sometimes, the fluff can be kind of seductive and intoxicating. And there's a time and a place for all of that. But really, truly, we don't have a lot of time here. I mean, we're given a gift. And if we don't take advantage of it, then we're kind of just losers, just, thumping around doing nothing. So for me, my grandfather, who was, a very successful businessman and definitely a very real person, had his own flaws for sure. But he would always say, here's the question to ask. Ask somebody, what do I need to do to get it done? And if you listen to them, and they might not even know, and they might say, hey, Marnie, I might need a few minutes, or I might need a few years, or I might need, maybe I don't know what that is, but maybe we can solve that. But asking somebody and asking yourself, okay, what do I need to do to get it done? And then actually being able to go do that are really things that ultimately will be able to at least get you on the road. And you might find, and you understand this, like in business and in life, that sometimes when you set a goal, you halfway through it, you might say, okay, that's great, but this is more interesting to me. And I was able to kind of pull apart and do all that. So ultimately, what do you need to do to get it done? And then just do it.
Bingo.
Yeah.
So before we continue on, just a couple words about you, because we all love to talk about ourselves, right? I'm just joking. But what I want to talk about briefly, Marnie, is that, obviously you had a very interesting and probably somewhat unique upbringing to an extent. So tell me a little bit about your grandfather, and I know we talked about this last night, and what you feel is his proudest things that he did, right?
Yes.
But talk about sort of your family, and then how it really evolved into and brought you towards wanting to keep on playing. I mean, obviously it resonated even when you were a child, and you've carried it, continued. So
thank you. So, I grew up in a very unusual set of circumstances, because even at the time, my parents were divorced. So I was an only child to a single working mother. So now I think it's much more traditional, right. But it might not have been back, way back in the dark ages when I was growing up.
90s.
Not exactly, but but I had this incredible good fortune and I know that it was, I was very blessed to have a family. My grandfather owned the Philadelphia Eagles, and
now what kind of what is that? Is that a basketball? What sport is that?
Well,
is that the current Super Bowl champions? Is that what you wanted to say? Okay.
Yes, they're the current Super Bowl, right? And again, it's like all about preparation, because the season's starting, so they have a few more weeks of being, the champs, and then it's back to business. Really, truly, then it's anybody's game. Right. So my grandfather owned the Philadelphia Eagles, and my mother, Susan, who's an incredible lady, my role model, my best friend, my go-to advisor, was my grandfather's legal counsel, because she's an attorney, vice president, and acting general manager of the team. And to this day, she's the only female that's held those positions within an NFL franchise. So I'm very proud of her. And I'm really proud of my grandfather for saying, here's a woman, whether it's his daughter or not, that is actually the most capable. And in many ways, oftentimes my grandfather was a man's man, an incredibly generous, incredibly philanthropic, but also able to see down the field, see the whole big picture. And to that is, he started in 1974 being able to be a visionary and execute. A football player named Fred Hill, his daughter was diagnosed with leukemia, and nobody knew what that was, and nobody knew how to deal with that. And so my grandfather said, well, we're going to find a cure, and we're going to do everything we can to make your time while you're dealing with a sick child as comfortable as possible. And the way that they did that was by providing housing for families right next to the hospital, because one of the things that they realized was just the commute, or if you had a child in the hospital, having to leave wherever you were to drive, ultimately it was a very challenging thing. Right. So they started this house, and they bought a building next to Children's Hospital. And my grandfather's, kind of funny joke was that, he could have named it the Leonard Toews house, but he's like, I can't even get one of my wives to stay in the house with me. I think we better go. Nice. I think we better go somewhere else. So he turned to his friend Ray Kroc, and Ray said, I love it, I'm in. Yeah. And then they put a McDonald's in the Children's Hospital in Philadelphia. And the first time that a McDonald's was ever inside a hospital happened to be in Philadelphia at Children's Hospital. And so then in 1974, through the efforts of the community of the city of Philadelphia and Ray Kroc, they opened up the first Ronald McDonald House in Philadelphia right next door to Children's Hospital.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's real. And now it's been 44 years, and the house is international, over 350 houses all over the world. And so what I realized through that is that I better get off my behind and start doing a bunch of stuff, because ultimately, we can do anything we want. I mean, if in 44 years, if that was, just with some hard work and some sweat equity and people seeing what the value is, we can really do a lot. And it's important to me, to my family legacy, to continue efforts for the Ronald McDonald House, which I'm very involved with, and also doing my own things because I have the ability to, to have some energy and vitality and call up on my resources like you, Mark, and say, okay, let's do this. How do we get it done?
Right.
Yeah.
Perfect. And so you were telling me that Keep On Playing, which is your one of your current passions, is sort of evolved from a lot of what you did as a child and as a teen and as you were growing up, right? I mean, Tell me more about that.
All right. Well, so I was lucky, again, like sometimes when you're in the middle of it, you don't view it as good fortune. And that's like the one thing that I definitely think age and clarity, gives you. So, okay, it's June, it's July. I go to work with my mother because I am an only child of a single working mom. Her office happened to be in the same place where they played football and baseball. So as an only child with a mom who was working, I was often hungry, because kids are bored and hungry and bored. So I would just roam around her office, which was where the Phillies played at the same time, and find myself being at the nice mercy of the secretaries at the Philadelphia Phillies. So they would take me in and they would feed me, give me a hot dog, give me a seat to a game, because, there were always seats to be had, usually in the middle of the day or like an early, 7:00 game, and teach me some of the things to look for on the baseball field. And it was so fascinating to me because I could watch this game and it was different than football. And it was really about, strategy in a way that was very, very different, again, than football was. The football strategy and the baseball strategy is very different. And you had to keep on playing till the very last out, just like in football, which was a family saying of ours too. But so I had this wonderful experience to get to go to baseball games, get a hot dog, enjoy the crowd, enjoy that whole thing. And I was like, it always stuck with me. And the reason why I love baseball is because I had this opportunity to experience it at a young age where I was impressionable enough and the people were nice to me. They actually made me feel important. Yes, I was, Leonard's granddaughter, but they were just nice because they wanted to share their love of the game. And once you can connect on that level, it doesn't really matter who you are, what offspring you are. It's just like, hey, Marnie, I'm going to show you something really cool, and this is how it is, and see how they're standing, and see how they're throwing. And, the statistics, the other part of it is that, looking at a stat sheet and learning how to do the math of it is really quite fascinating. And it really made me excited to learn about baseball. And I always knew that one day I was going to try to find a way to add that into the philanthropic endeavors that I have, and I was able to do that.
That's great.
Yeah.
So are there any specific, memory or two that stand out, interactions with some of the players that, they may have sort of taken the extra mile to show you a few things? Are there anybody, any specific people that stand out?
Well, I was lucky enough to be at some really great games. So in 1980, when I was, quite young. I was a little older than that. But, this was an amazing year. So, you have to look at like the whole composite of what was happening in the city of Philadelphia in 1980. The Sixers were doing great. Eagles had a great season that year, and they were on their way to the Super Bowl. But in 1980, I was at the World Series game when Tug McGraw, so it was like this unbelievable thing where the first time I had ever been at an event where now you're the world champs.
Right.
So that was something very exciting, and being able to be part of that and celebrate that as a young kid and enjoy it. And the irony is that, Bob Boone was the catcher of the Phillies at the time. And now, moving right along, his son Brett, who's the same, we're all the same age, Brett has become a friend of mine. And we kind of laugh at like how we were in the same scenario, like we have the same memories of the same, like, just the same experience of it. And he was, with his dad, and I was sitting with my grandfather at that game, and we were just so excited to be cheering for the Phillies and for our team. So I think that like those memories, like when it doesn't feel like a long time ago. And that's what I think the great thing about sports is that you can recall all those like fun things that happen, like the smell of the hot dog and the taste of the popcorn and just everything, the hit of the ball and the throw. All of it is just, it really brings you back to this great place, which I think adds to coping skills when you talk about kids that are in communities that are underserved. And I've, seen a lot of underserved kids. They're just looking for a way to just comfort themselves. And I really believe that getting a chance to go to a great sporting event, whether it's minor league baseball, whether it's whatever it is, which the talent level is there so great, having the ability just to remember that memory, I think, is a great way for them to self-soothe. And then perhaps it might intrigue them enough to actually want to learn how to do it. And we're going to help them. We're going to give them some tools to go try to do it. I mean, I feel fortunate that getting people to, you're giving me tools. So collecting my toolbox of life is really what's going to make me a fully formed human being. So I'm never going to be Mark, but you're going to give me some tools that will teach me how to go into a room and how to have a conversation and how to be a leader. And those are tools that are valuable, that are currency, way better than having, my money in my bank account. I'm going to put the money in my bank account from the tools that you're going to give me. And then I think you appreciate it much more.
Well, you're absolutely right. And it sounds like you've got a pretty full toolbox already, though. You're doing pretty well.
Thank you.
Home Depot would be proud.
Thank you.
But the interesting thing is that all of these things have all culminated for you to start and really run with Keep On Playing, your organization, your charity. I guess how do you characterize it?
Well, it's I guess it's a charity, or it's a way of giving back. I mean, so whether it's a charity or whether it's an organization, I suppose maybe. I'm organized, so it's just a way of giving back. It's a way for me to just connect with families and mothers, and I see the look on their face when they drop their kids off at one of our events, and they're just relieved. They can breathe for a little bit because they know, certainly as a mom, that I'm going to look after their own children, and I'm going to and having, I think, that connection. And one of the things that is different with my organization / charity is that I want to connect with the families. I want to connect with the moms. I have a great relationship through Facebook, which has been really terrific, with a lot of the parents or the caregivers that are, that are with the kids that they can introduce me to. So my friend Monica Patterson, she lives in Fort Myers. She's a great lady. She's a mom of 2 kids and a mom of, a stepmom of 2 other kids. And, we've developed this, and we're very typically, we would not have met, okay, if it was not for doing things like Keep On Playing. And I'm so grateful for that because she's my friend and I've learned a lot from her. And I hope she's learned some things from me, but I've definitely learned things from her. And she is just a really neat lady that when I get to go to Fort Myers, I get to see her and take her kids to a game and get her kids some baseball training and some clinics. And it's just a nice way for me to feel like I'm not just doing things for the kids, but I'm getting new friends too. And that's fun for me.
Well, look, and that's what makes this all so fulfilling, right? One of the things I always like to tell people, and it's sort of the core of what I wrote in Standing O about my mother, actually, was that whenever we'd go someplace, I always noticed that she not only wanted to be sort of the life of the party, but not in a social way, but she liked to be friendly to everybody, get everybody to laugh and to smile and to feel welcomed, Yeah. And whether it was the gas station attendant or the waiter or the waitress or the person at a sporting goods store or wherever it might be, the diner or something, it was always, they were always saying, wow, Mrs. Moyer, how are you doing today? It was so important to bring them in, and she valued everything that they did, right? And that's sort of carried on with me, where it doesn't matter what you do, who you are, what your background is. I love having conversations with everybody. And because I can always find out and see, everyone's got a story, everyone's got a background, a life, and what you just mentioned with your friend. Everyone's got something interesting to bring to the table, and that's what makes all this so much better than, other people have a tendency to close people out. That's just, or they stay within their comfort zone.
Well, and that's really, and yes, and they do. And I think that's just, my grandfather would say, you can't live in fear. And I think that a lot of that is, I'm not fear. I want to go make new friends and unusual. I don't want to put myself in a situation that's not safe. that being said, sometimes you just have to roll the dice and just, get lucky. But I also, you try to make sure that your exposure is not, in a situation that is not predictable or whatever it is. But I think getting out there and making new friends and listening to people and having the opportunity, I'm really grateful that people are very judgmental. I mean, people might look at me and be like, "Oh, bleach blonde," and what? Who knows what they? But at least that they're, the same way that I might see somebody and say, "Oh, well, we're not going to have anything in common." But the more that you actually get down to it, everybody really, especially when you're dealing with children, everybody wants to be as great of a parent as they possibly can be. Some people just don't have any tools or the ability to do it, and I think that that's what's so frustrating and so depressing for a lot of parents, is that they don't know how to do what they want to do. And even just on the slightest bit, if we could just give them a little bit of help, which we're definitely doing, then they feel better about themselves, at least that they know, okay, well, I can't do this for my kids, but I can put them in a place where they can have it done. And even like with minor league baseball, I mean, when any of the parents call me and it's not like a keep on playing event, and they're like, we want to go to the game. I'm like, fine, done. Just go. They're at will call. Just I'll take care of it, whatever it is. Because I like the idea that then they're actually thinking of like, okay, well, our kids had a good time at this. We're just going to go. Even if you go for a couple innings and just be there and experience it and be part of the crowd and maybe make some new friends while you're there. But I think it's great just to sit down at a live sporting event.
Oh, yeah.
Then, I mean, it's a great environment.
That's incredible. So we've been referencing it a lot, but tell me specifically, what is the mission of Keep On Playing? What are you trying to do with it? And really, more importantly, where do you want to take it? What's the long-term vision?
Well, the long-term, I guess I'll start with the long-term vision is having the ability to have different chapters or whatever that would be. I mean, different chapters of Keep On Playing. So if somebody calls me up and they say, I live in wherever it is, I think this is great. I want to commit to helping you, and I want to work with the Boys and Girls. I love to work with the Boys and Girls Club because they've got kids and they've got them organized and they're always looking to add things to their program. And then, okay, well, that's great. You want to work with the Boys and Girls Club in this community or even a rec center or whatever it is, wherever there's kids, whatever after school programs, anything like that. We can really, kind of find ways to make it work. And then I will connect them with their local minor league ball club and get them an introduction and do our program, which is basically we take kids to the game. That's kind of the first step of the program. And we try to take them in very nice transportation, because I've said this before, like going in a white minivan that looks like they've been kidnapped, nobody likes that. I don't think no one likes that. I mean, really. And it's like part of the whole thing is like, for me, my experience was like, the whole thing is like how you show up, like get in a nice bus that has like, they're going to feel better about, they're going to just feel, they're going to feel valued. And again, like your mother did with, with everybody that she valued them. Like she suddenly made them feel important, whether they were the bus boy, whether they were the whatever it is, whoever it was, she made people feel important. So I think transportation is how, getting the kids on a nice way to transport them. And again, because it's minor league, usually it's not that far. So it's not like a huge cost to get transportation. Right. The parking is very inexpensive. And usually the teams will just say, here, the buses can just park and unload or whatever. Right. And so then they get there. We make sure that the teams provide really, great seats in a safe area. And they sometimes get an on the field experience. They'll get a little, bases, whatever we can really, carve out our own plan. And then they enjoy the game and they get a hot dog. They get to just sit there and learn some things. And often the mascot, will spend some time in that section because I love mascots and kids do too.
Of course.
And then we follow it up with clinics afterwards. So either it's, the local colleges or the players that are on the team because they want to build their brand. I mean, they're starting to be, in some capacity, how do I be a leader of this team? And the only way to be a leader is by getting off your ass and like showing up and being involved in the community and starting to get your own fan base. And kids respond to people that show up. So now suddenly they start to develop a relationship with the kids in the community. And I mean, we've had a bunch of, great success stories where, minor league ball players interacted with a bunch of our kids, and now they're in the big leagues. And I even told a story, the other day about one of our, guys that showed up at one of our clinics, German, and he was great, and he was in Double A, and now he's on the Rockies. He's a pitcher. He had a home run the other night. I mean, this is a big deal. I mean, this is a guy who, definitely has been, he's kept on playing, and he really kind of exemplifies some of the things that we really try to do. And then we also get equipment for the rec centers so that it's there, so that when people want to even just show up, if you're like, I have a few hours today, it's a beautiful day, or I've had a really bad day, I just want to go be with some kids, you can call up the Boys and Girls Club or call up the rec center and say, hey, it's Mark, I want to come over. And they're like, great, come over. We're going to unlock the, our Keep On Playing locker, take the stuff out, play with the kids. We'll give you some sheets that we have, curated by professional athletes on hitting or catching or throwing. Even if you don't know how to do it, you can just read off a sheet, and then it's kind of like how I cook. So turn it up to 500, it'll cook faster and better. But I call the fire department first. So I'm like, fellas, I'm turning on the oven. Just FYI. Just stand on alert. Right. I'm hoping that you won't be hearing from me, but you may be. So, we just try to make it easy as possible for anybody to be involved in it, because oftentimes when it's easy, it can be repeated and repetition.
One thing you spoke about the other day was how good people feel when they do something as simple as having catch, right? And, whenever I'll often read people that write about their parents, their father, their mother, and they'll say, well, some of my fondest memories are when I was just in the backyard with them playing catch, right? And it's true, like I didn't play a lot of catch with my dad necessarily. He wasn't as much into that, but we did do it a few times, and I do remember those times. I've probably played 6 million hours of catch with my son, and ground balls, fly balls, all kinds of stuff, because it's really a bonding thing. We're sharing time together, and it's over a game that really, I think when people learn it and they absorb it, it really stays with them. And you've spoken about how good it feels when you swing a bat and you make contact and the sound it makes and how people are excited. But tell me, I know you described it really well. Go for it.
Well, it's just, for me, I think that, and I've spent some more time thinking about that. When you go to a baseball game, there's a lot of quiet. I think people say it's boring because it's quiet. So there's, you can't really hear a ball being thrown, and you can't really hear a ball being caught. So, so even people in the Baseball Hall of Fame have only hit the ball, like 30% of the time that they're having. So the likelihood that you go to a game and you're going to hear noise other than the crowd is you might not hear anything. But the most exciting part about going to a baseball game, and why people pay huge dollars for it, is when you do hear the baseball make contact with the bat. It is like a sound that is just, it's so beautiful, and it's just a great sound. And I think that that's what excites people to show up time and time again. And so I think getting kids to hear that sound, to listen, and to actually just almost be patient enough, which definitely now with all the stuff, and I'm terrible on my phone too. I'm always on my phone or whatever it is. But I think that going to a game and being able to listen for that sound, which is really sexy, which is why, like I've said, like they don't call Bryce Harper sexy in the box for nothing. I mean, yeah, he's a cute guy, but like he's sexy in the box because he hits the baseball. That is why. And hard, yeah. And he hits the baseball. I mean, he makes contact. And anytime, like, whether it is like, you make contact with me to help me to be an advocate of mine, to be a cheerleader of mine. And I always say, like, cheering for others makes you a leader, a cheerleader. That's like one of my sayings, and and cheering, and it really started, from me being at a Cowboys game, and we'll talk about that another time. But because the Cowboys are the Cowboys, but they do it great. They give you cheerleaders, and like they all that's their thing. But making contact with anything is something that actually makes you feel important. So reaching out to somebody, which is the same version in a lot of ways as hitting a baseball, is making contact and letting them know that they're important. Now, obviously, okay, that's like, big picture stuff. But here's the deal. With a baseball player or whatever it is, making contact with that baseball, that's the sound and then that we hear and we wait for it at a baseball game, because it really is something that's exciting and also almost impossible to do. Professional athletes, I've seen, Michael Jordan, he could hit, ultimately he could do 6 rings, whatever it is. Hitting a baseball, much harder.
Yeah.
So I think that it's like when you think about that and like actually making contact with something, and the crack of that sound is so exciting, and that's why people want to keep showing up.
Well, it's funny, and maybe you know this, but back in the 20s, 30s, 40s, when games were broadcast on the radio, they weren't broadcast live necessarily. They were done by ticker tape. And so the announcer would read the ticker tape about what's just happened, and he would say, and here's the pitch. And then he would actually take something and go like, and it's he'd bang it like a crack of a bat and say, and it's a deep drive to center field. It's going back. But he's reading it from the ticker tape. But people would listen to it they felt like they were at the game.
I love listening to baseball on the radio.
Oh yeah, it is amazing. But you're very right about when you hear the sound of contact. And other people, like, for example, they love football because of the contact, or hockey because of the checking and the contact. But baseball with the baseball bat, you're absolutely right. When you hear the crack of the bat and, when they really connect and the ball flies and it's a home run and so forth, you're right. That's the moment of true excitement and so forth.
Right.
The crowds go crazy. So now what you're trying to do, I think, with Keep On Playing, though, is to inject that sort of, that feeling, that high or whatever it is, into these kids that haven't experienced it much yet. And maybe they've had, whether it's a challenging childhood and upbringing, or they've just not been exposed to the sport much. And by bringing them to a minor league game, they can watch it and witness it and then see these people getting their hits and the crack of the bat. Hopefully it's kind of becoming contagious, and they want to be a part of the game. And what Keep On Playing is also doing is really supplying them not just with the ability to go to the game and experience that, but also to then start playing, to start having that catch with somebody else and to start getting involved. And what I really like about it is that you're also looking at it from, as you said, maybe a bigger perspective, where you're saying, look, John Smith or Nancy Jones or whoever you are, we're going to not only give you some equipment, but we'll also cover some of the fees that usually go along with joining a Little League team, so you can actually have the ability to play where maybe you used to be on this side of the fence looking at kids playing the game and you were jealous, or you wanted to be a part of that, and you would hear the other kids have the crack of the bat, but you couldn't have that. And what Keep On Playing is trying to do is really put the kids on the right side of the fence, to be playing the game and not just watching it, right?
Well, often, even in my own, I'll give you an example. So, we recently moved, and I said, I have to get my youngest into a rec baseball league. It was really hard to figure out how to do that. And I'm an educated person, and it's my, I have access to people and things and computers, but I was like, how do I get him in the rec league is $50 for the entire season. It's like the best value ever. But I did not know who to call or how to get it done. So I think that's what happens, is that like you don't even know as a parent, which is so wrenching. If as a parent, like all you want to do is just give your kids the best childhood ever.
Right.
And that's really what you want to do. I don't care where. There's always exceptions, but 99.9% of parents, but they might not know how to do it. And so so taking the child that's on one side of the fence and then saying, okay, here you go. We're going to open the door. We're opening the door. And like with anything, if the door's open, then there's an opportunity. And, you can't obviously force people to do things. You can. They're certain people you've been forced to do things, but
kids, right?
exactly, you can be like, no, put on a blazer. We're going to a party. But ultimately, you can make it easier for them. And again, like giving them access to make it easy. So we, last year in Fort Myers, a young boy took a really good active interest in some of the things we were doing and made it very clear that this was something he wanted to pursue. And so I, reached out to the Miracle, the Fort Myers Miracle, the Minnesota Twins single A, and I said, I would like to sponsor this young boy to do your baseball camp. And they said, oh no, we're going to take care of it. Don't worry about it. We got it. Like we can, and so they want to, the teams, and, and so we ended up saying, I said, well, I'll do one and you do one. And then they said, that's a great idea. And these are just things that like this young boy now in his community has now kind of become the king of the baseball, which is exactly what Major League Baseball wants. I mean, I keep on playing, we're beach entry baseball. We're not trying to make necessarily hardcore baseball players. What we really are trying to do is get kids to play catch, learn to love the game, learn to have some coping skills with it, because then a lot of other opportunities will open up. And ultimately, it's all about opportunity, and choices. And the more opportunities and choices you have, probably the more success you're going to have.
Absolutely. So one of the things I want to talk about now is jumping into, well, how can maybe I help give some advice on helping grow this? Because, you've already sold me on this. I think it's an amazing organization and the mission and what you're trying to do with it. And I love the idea that you would love to open chapters in different towns and cities, nationally. But really, it's a big undertaking, right, to do all this sort of thing. So some of the most, it's going to require fundraising without a doubt.
Yes.
Now, everybody battles for everybody else's dollar. I mean, that's the truth. That's the way it is. And there's all kinds of very important organizations out there that they're trying to raise money for a variety, whether it's diseases, et cetera. There's others that are trying to raise money for, museums and the arts and so forth. And what you're doing is what you're doing. Well, what we need to do is really talk about, well, how do you appeal to people that have all these competing hands reaching out for their money? And, you've mentioned it before, you're not really comfortable asking people directly for money. And it's not an easy thing to do. You've got a great organization, a great charity, and the goal is amazing because, I always like to say to people, start with one. If you take this young man that you said is now the king of baseball, and you've made such an impact in this one young man's life, but he's going to take it and tell his friends and his family, and it's going to multiply from there. So to me, if you're just impacting one person at a time, it's really impacting potentially millions, right? That's the whole point.
I think so. I mean, it definitely is a ripple effect or whatever that term would be.
Right.
It's really about, okay, how do we carve out a way to get kids in communities and reach out to, and yeah, fundraising's because it's not just like fundraising, because I'm not going to sit on a street and be like, oh, can I have some pennies for my charity? Ultimately, I am like one of those people where I'm like, here are the results, here's what we've done, here's what we're doing. I'd love your involvement. If you want to use your network and your resources to be helpful, that would be great. And here's what you're going to get for it, because it always has to be, there's always like a quid pro quo or a win-win or a give-get or whatever. I think. I mean, so ultimately, here's how it works. Like, you want to give your time, you're going to get all these great things with it. And then you'll feel good. So, I mean, that kind of stuff.
So here's my feeling on the quid pro quo, though. Because I think some charities feel like, well, I used to watch on PBS, they'd always have, like, these amazing... it'd be like seeing, a Beatles concert or something, but then 11 times during the concert, they'd interrupt and say, here, for your $40 donation, you get this tote bag.
Right.
For $50, you get this whatever it is. And I'd be like, I don't need your tote bag. I don't need that stuff. I'll give it to you because you're giving me this great programming. I don't need stuff, right? Maybe other people like the stuff, but I don't really.
I know. Well, I wonder, do you think people like the stuff?
I don't know. I've seen some of those tote bags, so maybe they do. I don't know. But to me, I'm thinking, if I keep on playing whatever the amount is, $100, $1,000, $10,000, whatever the amount is. And I understand, or I'm told that your $100 basically just brought 5 kids to a baseball game, and it gave them, a Diet Coke and a couple of hot dogs and a chance to run around the bases and a signed baseball by one of the players or whatever it is. Well, then suddenly I'm like, wow, that is cool. That I reached into my bank account or whatever it was, I sent you some money, and I've impacted these kids. I love to see the impact that my donation is giving. I couldn't care less if you say to me, Mark, if you send me $100, I'll mention you in the next edition of whatever it is. I don't care about that. I care about how I'm impacting people. And to me, the very first thing I would do to really elevate Keep On Playing is by telling people, look, just send me $10, $20, $30, because that $20 is going to get one kid the following stuff. If you send me $1,000 or $2,000, it's going to buy a batting cage for these kids to play at the Boys and Girls Club of Harlem, of wherever, of LA, of wherever you are. If you send me $5,000, not only can I have a batting cage, but I can have an actual former Major League Baseball player show up for a couple of days and give a clinic for your donation, whatever it is. And then when I'm seeing all that, I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. Because you know what? I hate to say this, and I'm probably saying it badly or wrongly, but I've seen those late night TV commercials where they show the poor starving kids in some country that's not U.S. It might be Africa or Asia, or wherever it is, and the tears coming down the kids' eyes, and they say, if you send just $10 now, this child will have enough food to eat for the next whatever it is. And I'm like, oh my God, look, he's going to starve if I don't reach in now and do this. It's so effective and it works. But I don't really know, because that child is some country that I don't even know where they are.
You don't, yes.
I don't see the result. But if I know that I'm donating to my local, wherever it is, and you're directing the money there.
Well, that's the other thing too, is that's why the chapter thing is really, because I wanted to stay in that community. I mean, when people are giving, they want to make their community better, because that will ultimately make their property value better. Everything becomes better when their community is thriving. Then everything for them, like high school, certainly within high school sports, like I always say, like high school sports are a great thing to participate in, because if the football team at that high school is doing well, your housing prices are going to go up, because people are going to want to live there and everything else. And on Friday nights, the supermarket's going to be busier because they're going to be tailgating for the high school football game. And it's just going to give a sense of pride, of ownership, of being in that community. So the same thing, like with having chapters, I want people to go and put money back into their community. And that's one of the things that creating chapters allows us to do that, so that now there's batting cages, and that we can bring in professional athletes, and we can bring in a lot of people, so that they can suddenly make their community a little bit more. I mean, I'm sure that there's, it's a very, little tiny baby steps, but just a little bit more fun for the kids in that community. And then the families and the parents feel appreciative of what's going on from the other people that live there.
Right.
I think that's
I've
nice.
got all these ideas that are popping in my head on how to really increase exposure. But one of the things I was, we chatted briefly about this the other day, but there are oftentimes coaches of, let's say, high school or college teams that want to also get their players, their kids, to be involved with some sort of philanthropic stuff and, helping in the community, right? But what they'll do is they'll sometimes bring the kids to a hospital. But kids, like, teenagers and sort of young adults are not comfortable in that environment, I think,
No, I think you're right.
And so I think instead, if they have the opportunity, if they're contacted by somebody from your charity to say, look, why don't you, instead of going to a hospital where the kids are feeling miserable, have the kids come, and maybe every week 2 different players come for 3 hours a day and just play catch with these kids and show them how to hit and show them how to whatever it is, and rotate your team through, so that for the next 3 months we've got 2 of your kids from your high school team or the college team coming to show these players. And this way you can bring in chapters from every single town and city and so forth, because it's not just the minor league games they're going to, but then it's also the kids might get excited to go watch the local college or even the team from Penn State or Florida State or wherever it is, right?
Yeah.
To go watch them play. because they know that those teammates came and taught them, and it works. It's sort of a win-win, right?
Oh, absolutely. And that, I think that's a great suggestion and a great idea. And ultimately, you know, I think exposing kids on both sides of the fence to one another, like, you know, that's really what it's about, because that really creates empathy. And I think that if you don't have empathy, I mean, I've been told that I have an overabundance of empathy, which is, I'm fine with that. But I think that creating, you know, I think that a lot of kids don't understand. It's not like, oh, you're so lucky, your lifestyle. No, it's really about like seeing, like making friends in places that you wouldn't necessarily have met those kids, and vice versa. And so I think that that's a great way to connect the dots in many ways. And I think for parents on both sides, it really does lend itself to, you know, having some, my grandfather would always say, civility is not a sign of weakness. So I think that teaching kids, you know, I mean, being civil where it might be kind of uncomfortable in a lot of ways because you just don't know. Because I think a lot with people, whether they're, you know, young or old, when you don't know, when it's an unknown, your normal reaction is to be a little bit rigid. So I think that learning to be good about, you know, going into new situations is a great learning tool for, you know, for all kids, for all people. And it really does open, you know, but I think bringing, you know, finding ways to bring everybody in. And that's the thing about sports, is that it brings people together. I mean, it just does.
Absolutely.
And it brings people together. So having the opportunity then, if they're local high school or college kids, and now suddenly they're going to have more fans showing up to their games, it makes the experience better too, for the players, for everybody.
Well, look, and when you're a member of a team, you have a new family. I mean, you're expanding your family. You develop new relationships that really, you know, I've been playing. I joined a men's hockey league 12 years ago, and I've been on this one team. Now I have, you know, basically a dozen friends that I've had for all these years that I never would have had if I didn't join that team, right?
Right.
So that's what makes all of this amazing. Well, what I want to do is, I mean, now's your chance to tell people. How do they get involved? Like, you know, well, so tell me first of all, the website is
keeponplaying.org.
Okay.
Yes.
And so obviously go check out the website, right? And read more about some of the different stories you've had and some of the places you've impacted, which is great. And if they want to get a hold,
or they can contact you, Mark, and you can put them in touch with me. How about that?
Well, that's adding an extra layer, but I'm happy to know. But no, I've already told you I'm excited to become involved, because I think that you know, I've been a baseball fan since, you know, 1911, and I've been a Little League coach for a while. I love teaching kids. It's just it's such a great feeling when you see that you've connected with a child and they get it.
They get it. When they get it, I mean, it's like, it's really, truly unbelievable. Like watching people actually watching, you know, when they get it, and just I will say this, that like when you can watch them have that like kind of strut, okay, after it's just their body language, like they, you know,
stand up more.
And then just just the ease of like watching them run on and off the field, and it's quick. I mean, it happens really. So that's really what it's so exciting to just watch, and to, you know, put down your phone, unless you're whatever, we're all videotaping, but like really just to watch what happens and see how the change, like this transformation is really so exciting. And to me, and that's why I love to do it. So I think that if people want to get involved, and I love to hear feedback, and I'm really accessible, and this is really important to me, so I care about it. I want to if people want to contact me or want to contact you to get to me, like I want to know how, you know, how we can do it and what their ideas are, and how if they want to be involved, I will give them, you know, access and my relationships to, you know, to the teams and to the rec centers, or tell them, you know, what kind of I think would be a great thing. And they can, you know, just go on the website, or they can email me directly and I'll respond.
Well, and what we're also going to do is really show everybody how their money is making that impact, because again, you know, that transparency is what makes it so much easier to have people feel comfortable about giving to a great organization. So now the next step for you is to continue growing this and to run with it. What else is going on in your life?
Well, I also am a children's book author, and in addition to writing, something for Standing O, which was great, and Scott, did Scott McGregor, our mutual friend,
yes.
Put together this wonderful book, and the proceeds are going to Keep On Playing and this other wonderful charity called Elevate,
yes.
which we have a lot of synergistic opportunities, so we're going to really capitalize on that. So, and you wrote a beautiful chapter for Standing O about your mother, and that's a great thing, and having a great mother, because I certainly do, is something I'm very grateful for. So definitely trying to help Scott promote Standing O, because it's really important, and he's put a lot of effort into it.
Definitely.
And I am a huge fan of his, and I think he really loves what we're doing with Keep On Playing, and he's been great whenever I say, Scott, I need help for some transportation, and he's always like, sure, how much, whatever.
Yeah.
Doesn't even ask him much. He's like, fine, just do it, and we'll take care.
Yeah.
He also knows I'm fiscally responsible, so I think that's part of it, is that like knowing the leadership or whatever it is in any group, knowing who they are and their accessibility, their transparency, their track record of being successful definitely helps, and being not seeming to be, I think, is something that I really try. I am that. I mean, it's just really important for me to be really authentic and be genuine and be all the things that I, have worked really hard.
But now you need to tell me, but you've been skirting it. Come on, talk to me about Freddie.
Okay, so I am, thank you.
Come on.
All right. So for many years, people would come up to me and they would say, you really need to write a book about your childhood growing up with this very interesting character, Leonard Toes, and your mom, and what was it like? And I thought about it, and I was like, okay, I started to write things, and, I wrote one kind of very dramatic story called Interceptions, and it was like a soap opera. And it was great and fun, but it was like a little too mature, and I was like, who's going to read this? It's kind of, maybe eventually. So I then had gotten in touch with a publisher who published my mother's book. My mom wrote a book about being a woman in business, and he said, well, I don't do kids' books, but here's who does. So he turned me on to a publisher, and we, sat down, and I said, well, I have this idea. I had written this book called Football Freddy and Fumble the Dog Game Day. And it was a way to share my love of football and all the great cities that I got to travel to as a kid, to different readers and different communities all over. So we did the first one, Football Freddy and Fumble the Dog Game Day in Philadelphia. And we just picked Philadelphia because, obviously. Of the history. There's great history in Philadelphia and great food. And so we did that book, and it came out last year, and it was a great success, and everybody loved it. And it's a kid's book for sure, but adults love to read it because, it highlights different wonderful parts of the city or things that they remember if they don't live in Philadelphia, and then they can share it. And then, of course, cheesesteaks and things like that. And then you get to the stadium, so you get to learn a little bit about football. And I always say that, like, speaking sports is the universal language. So if I can, in a tiny way, get kids to speak some sports, then I think it opens up a lot of doors, because now suddenly they can communicate with their potential boss, or they can communicate with their teacher, or they can communicate with their father, brother, mother, whatever it is, uncle. So it kind of makes the world smaller in its own way. So speaking sports to me is a universal language.
And so what are the plans for the book series?
So Philadelphia came out, and it's available on, footballfreddy.com. And now in about 10 days, Football Freddy and Fumble the Dog Game Day in the Carolinas is going to be, you can pre-order it now, but we will actually have it in our possession. Yes. And so the plan with that is we did a big partnership with the USO of North and South Carolina.
Great.
And so we've already sold thousands of books in advance, so we are donating to the USO, kids in North Carolina and South Carolina on military bases.
Great. Wow.
And that's just one of the things that we're going to be doing, is handing out a few hundred copies to kids on the bases. And then what I would like to do, one of the things that is kind of in the plan, is to sell a tremendous amount of books and then be able to take them overseas to kids that are on bases out of this country. history. So I feel like that's a great way for them to learn about the Carolinas, and they can learn about Philadelphia. Atlanta's next, and then DC. Those are like the next, the four.
Yeah.
So by the holiday, Christmas time, we'll have four. But
I didn't hear you say New York, and
it's soon.
Coming soon.
It's coming soon. It is,
yeah,
coming soon. I mean, New York is like doing the Carolinas was, Philadelphia has, obviously a tremendous amount of history, but doing the Carolinas, we covered a lot of ground because there are two states, one team. Yeah. We added in a new character, so Freddie gets shown around by her friend Mary, whose father's in the military, and so that was kind of something that we really wanted to add in. And then they have a nice homecoming ceremony at the game in the book. So these are just things that were important to me to highlight. I'm a huge fan of the military. I'm very grateful for first responders. Yes. When my grandfather owned the Eagles, not only did he start the Ronald McDonald House, but he also bought bulletproof vests, over 800 of them for all the Philadelphia policemen while he owned the team, because he, really cared about the community, and ultimately firemen and policemen. Without them, we don't have football, we don't have baseball, we really have nothing. And certainly without the military, we definitely have no ability to operate. So it was really important to me to find ways to give back to the first responders, military, firemen, and policemen.
That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
So we've covered a ton of ground today. We could probably, we can talk for another 16 hours. But I just wanted to look. Today was all about really highlighting Keep On Playing. We had a great event last night with the launch of the book. You've got your upcoming books that are coming out, which is amazing. But most importantly is really trying to figure out how, the best ways to increase the awareness for Keep On Playing, get some money coming in, start getting more and more of these kids involved, and more and more of these kids involved, and best of all, really making an impact, right?
That's it. Making it, and that's like maybe we're going to rephrase it. So making an impact is great, but making contact is better.
Excellent. I like that.
Because once you make contact, then it really does ignite a passion. And, for me, like, I recently wrote this article that ended up getting published in a couple different, places, Philadelphia papers and so forth, about my first love. Okay. My first, summer romance was with, and I kind of make a joke about it, but it was with somebody that was definitely an unlikely match. And also a 7-foot, hairy, green character named the Philly Fanatic. And having in 1978 or whatever it was, I was very young, and I had this opportunity to, meet the Philadelphia Fanatic. And suddenly now it's like, so that, creating this it ignites a love. When you're with people that are, doing things that are exciting to you, it ignites this love that is really maybe better than like a romantic love. It's like a love of giving back, and a love of being involved, and a love of sharing. And those are the things that I think really do carve out your spirit and your emotional intelligence to really want to be a good person and to share all that stuff. So I think that sports and giving kids an opportunity to play sports is like giving them a love that they will always have forever. And with that love, it opens up so much opportunity, and learning how to love. Those are things that I think ultimately make you better in relationships, better as a parent, better as a mother, daughter, son, brother, whatever it is, boss. Those are things that are the currency that are invaluable, but that, are so tangible that I'm trying to create that.
Well, look, you're doing an amazing job so far.
Thank you.
And it's just going to get better.
Thank
you.
I
look forward to it. Thanks so much for being with us today. Us.
Thank you, Mark.
Things are really looking up. So look forward to it. And clearly you've demonstrated how you're making your mark. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. I feel really grateful. Thank
awesome.
you.
Thanks so much for joining us today on this episode of Make Your Mark podcast. The goal of the podcast is to help you find ways to make your mark, to succeed in life, and to jump past your competition. Be sure to leave me a review on iTunes and Stitcher, and subscribe to be the first to hear new episodes. If you're looking for ways to make your mark, send me an email, mark@markmoyer.com, and I'll get back to you right away. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.